And we're live. Cool. What's up,
Sweet.
Dave?
How's it going, Alex?
It's going well. I was about to say it's Tuesday. It is Tuesday, right? Tuesday,
It is
Wednesday.
it is Tuesday. Yeah.
How's your week going so far?
Pretty good, pretty good. Getting a little bit done.
Any highlights?
Uh nothing super noteworthy. No.
Totally fair. So, an uneventful casual week is kind of a bit of a
Yeah.
luxury right now. So, not bad. I'll allow it. Cool. So I'm thinking we'll just hang out for a couple minutes while folks come on through,
Yeah,
and
cool.
once we've got a couple folks in the chat, we'll we'll get started with looking at your actual sales page.
Sweet. I'll pull up the stream too so I can join the chat.
Sweet. I do see we got a couple folks in the chat. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome,
Sweet.
welcome. Glad you're here with Dave and I. We're going to get going in just a couple of minutes. If you want to just take a second to say hello, introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know who's here, who's tuning in, whether you're coming from Twitter or Indie Hall or Party Corgi or the internet, Twitch, wherever it is. We're glad you're here. But this one's going to be fun. Trying something new. If you've been here before, you may notice some different things about the way that the stream is set up today. We've got another, screen share version. We've done those before for some of the live copywriting, but there's two of us on screen. Dave, would you like to, I don't know, tell folks who you are? Who are you? What are you doing in my stream?
Sure. Um so my name's Dave Ceddia. I blog about React and stuff. All this sort of started a few years ago when I took the 30 by 500 class with that Amy and Alex run. And yeah, so I guess today we're chatting about a product that I launched. Someone on Twitter, Joe Praveet, I hope I'm saying his name right, ran this 2-week challenge where a bunch of people joined up, and the goal was to build and ship a product in 2 weeks. So like it was really good for keeping the thing constrained. Needed to be done in 2 weeks. It also needed to be launched and kind of priced appropriately for a small thing. And just kind of I haven't done a launch in a while, so it felt good to kind of get something out. And so yeah, I joined the challenge, shipped the thing. This is a few weeks ago now. I guess like early September, I think.
Nice.
Mid September.
And
Yeah.
and launch went well.
Launch went pretty well. It's sold like 190 or so copies now.
Solid.
$4,000 ish.
Hey,
Pretty good.
that's not
Pretty
bad.
good.
That's not a bad out of the gate start for those 2 week constraints.
Yeah.
Very respectable. Real quick in the chat, what's up, John Hilton? Good to see you here.
Hey, John.
James. Thank you for the subscription. Super appreciate that. Welcome to the channel. Glad to have you here and appreciate the support. And it looks like there's a good number of folks. We got like 10 or 12 folks tuned in right now, which is great.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, everybody. For those of you who are just joining, Dave's given a little bit of background on this 2 week challenge project that he did, and you could obviously see, if you've got the screen big enough, what the link is. I'm going to zoom in on stuff when we get to the screen share part of this, but if anybody wants to check out the actual page that is live, that is useeffectoverlunch.com. I want to talk where the name came from. We'll talk about that in a little bit because that's a fun story. Slimy Pile Joe, what's up,
Hey,
man?
Joe,
Good
how's
to
it
see
going?
you here. And yes, this is React. Dave has been writing about and creating products for folks who work in React for a little while now. What are the other products that you have that are related to React now, Dave?
Yeah. So the first one I made was a book called Pure React. And that's at my site. It's like daveceddia.com/pure-react. Um, so that was like that was my kind of my first digital product. And then I did a course on Redux called Pure Redux. And then I did a larger kind of like a video self-paced workshop version of the book, also called Pure React, sort of confusingly. That one's at purereact.com. Um, but that launched last year. And so so I've got kind of like a growing slowly growing portfolio anyway.
Cool. And did you end up doing some stuff with Egghead as well?
Yeah, so I'm an egghead instructor too. I joined them, kind of joined on like a couple years ago now. So
Cool.
I've got a course on there and a few standalone lessons, and the Pure React video workshop was kind of like a partnership thing with them.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's awesome.
Well, I think we've got some folks in the chat, which has got me excited. Got me exciting. Whatever. And I think we should like maybe switch to our main event. This is you are all witnessing the beginning of kind of a new experiment, something that I've been wanting to do here on the channel. One of the things we've talked about doing is, landing page teardowns and sort of critiques, and going through somebody's page and looking for, what did you do well and what could you do better. We still want to do that. We may even do a little bit of that here. I know Dave's got a couple of specific things he'd like to look at. So sort of a live critique. You can learn from somebody else making their sales page better. This one's kind of special though, because Dave has already done the work of making his sales page better. And one of the things that I love about what we're going to be able to share today is kind of unique. A lot of times you only see the finished sales page, and Dave was forward thinking enough to save snapshots along the way, so you kind of get to see the entire process. And one of the things that I've loved about being able to share the copywriting process that I go through is you see that the first version isn't very good. And along the way, it gets better, and there is definitely some strategy and some specific thought processes that go into figuring out how to make a sales page better. So we're going to go through from rough draft all the way to the final sales page that, sold almost 200 copies, in just in the last couple of weeks. Before we get to that, Kyle Cords, what's up? No boring human names are great, because on Twitch people have names that are hard to pronounce. So Kyle, I appreciate you. I appreciate your simple name. Thank you. And Sparrowhawk 91, what's up? Welcome to the stream. Thanks for being here. Especially for folks that are new to the stream. Super glad you're here. So, like I said, we've got Dave's. This is the sales page we're looking at right now, is what is actually live on the internet. It's what you can see right now, and I'm presuming this is pretty darn close to what was up at launch. Have you made any changes since actual launch day, Dave?
This is pretty much it. I think, I don't think I've really changed much of anything since launch day.
Cool. So I'm going to scroll real quick. We're going to come back to this, and then I'm going to close it, because we're going to sort of work our way forward to that. And instead, we're going to look at this. Some straight up old text. And I want to have Dave explain a little bit about how this stuff made it onto the page. But for a little bit of context for those who are new and those who are not in 30 by 500, there's some language in here, some context that I think will just be useful so things aren't confusing. The first thing is that when we sit down to write really anything, whether it's a sales page or a blog post, I sometimes ignore my own advice and I sit down and I just start writing sentences. And those are the times where I usually write the same sentence 100 times, hate every version of it, and then get frustrated and crack a beer. Just literally anything else. Does that sound familiar, Dave?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so whether we're talking about a blog post or a sales page, there's a really much simpler starting point where you can avoid that sort of talking, trying to think, write, and edit all at the same time. We start with an outline. And so at 30 by 500, we call this the bullets of gold. The bullets of gold are the sort of the marks that we want to hit in the final pitch. And they sort of break down into sort of three core areas. And we've got pain, dream, and fix. So do you want to describe a little bit about where this bullets of gold level outline started, Dave? When you sat down to say, all right, I'm going to do Joe's 2-week $10 product challenge, where did you start? How did you choose? Was there any sort of, method to the madness? And talk to me about specifically, especially this first section, this pain section, what are we actually looking at here?
Yeah, so when I started the challenge, I was thinking this idea so this whole product is based around this thing called use effect, which if you're used to React, you know what that is probably, but if you're not, it's a it's one of the more tricky things about React, which is a JavaScript framework that's pretty popular these days. And so I've written a few blog posts about this use effect thing, and a few of them have done pretty well. Either when I've originally shared them, or like over time with like getting some SEO rankings and stuff, kind of naturally. And I figured that like there's some underlying pain here. There's some underlying need that like people are clearly searching for this stuff, and like this is a tricky thing. Like it's this sort of like a Swiss Army knife. This use effect function. It like does a lot of different things depending on how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not entirely obvious how to like take your problem and break it down and make make this thing do what you want.
Got it. So there were clues from your own observation of what's happening in your audience and what you're even seeing on your own site, that there is pain around this thing, and then you combine that with sort of the 2-week $10 constraint. This doesn't need to be the biggest, most expensive problem, but it's a problem that enough people are having that if there was something that could save them some time struggling, through, I'm guessing, the docs or, the config or whatever it is, that it would, at the $10 price point, you don't have to, this doesn't need to be the most expensive pain they're feeling every day to be worth you putting
Right.
2 weeks worth of time into.
Yeah, and my goal was that this is a pretty small. I mean, it's a small subset of the whole like React as a whole. Um, so my goal here wasn't to like teach React. Like you're not gonna buy this product if you aren't already using React probably. Um, but yeah, I knew from from doing research kind of that led to those blog posts that I wrote. Um, the 35500 calls this Safari, a sales Safari, and so this is pretty much like reading forums and sussing out like what are people struggling with, and what should I spend time on writing about. Um, and so yeah, so that led to a few of those blog posts came from kind of like forum threads and stuff. Some of them came from like actual people, like friends of mine asking questions, or subscribers, email subscribers replying with like, hey, I have this weird use effect thing, how do I make it work? um, that I tried to sort of genericize into like a useful blog post. And so that's where a lot of these pains came from. um, so and some of this is from just using the thing myself. Like I am a React developer. I know that this function is tricky to get right. And um, definitely like I struggled with this thing when I first learned about it a year or two ago. um, so some of this is it's sort of a mishmash of like things that I've struggled with, things that I've seen people struggle with, um, and some, you know, kind of quotes and stuff that have been floating around in my head.
Cool. And so is that what we're looking at here in terms of this outline level? Is this sort of brain dump? Is there any organization to it? Is there any, flow? Was there anything that you put down here and then you removed? And I know I'm asking you to try and remember back what's probably over a month ago now. But when you fill out the pain section, which is really where this outline starts, how do you approach that? Is it just like dump everything and then reorganize it, or how do you approach getting to what we're actually looking at here on the page?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I think this is really more of a brain dump. I think I wasn't thinking in terms of like copy structure here. This was more like, what are the pains around use effect? What do people struggle with? I was trying to figure out like, okay, if my product is going to be something around use effect, like what should the videos be on? Like how can I get to specific subjects that I should cover? Um, so I was kind of going at that angle, like what do people struggle with use effect, and like how can I just like specifically like what sort of problems do they try to solve, and sort of like what confusions do they have? Um, and that's I figured I'd use that as my starting point, and then kind of go from there.
Well, and you just said the word confusion, and as I'm reading through this, I do see problems with the tool, as it were. But there's a bunch of things in here that are also describing not just the product, but they're describing feelings. So I see the word confusing. I see, like stabbing in the dark, feeling uneasy. which one to use, feels kludgy. So are those, I'm guessing, as I'm hearing you describe, it's a combination of your own feelings, like because this is not a deeply safaried experience, you didn't have a lot of language, but you could also make some educated guesses about your own experience of what that feels like. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think these quotes are, I wouldn't say they're not like directly pulled from quotes on Safari, but I think that they're like, it's not all entirely my own head either. I think that it's kind of informed from seeing people complain
Yeah.
about it on Twitter and stuff
Sort
like
of
that.
representative. It's the kind of thing you absorb when you spend enough time kind of
Yeah.
soaking in it, or you get your own readers writing in about it. So, I think the combination of this thing this thing hurts with some specific emotions about I've got multiple options to choose from. If I do a thing, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, those are all what I'm seeing here is opportunities for you to say, okay, I can't fix the tool. I can't make the tool less confusing, but if someone is confused, I can make them feel confident. If there are multiple options, I can teach them how to choose between those options, things like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Which brings us to sort of the dream section. So, do you want to describe the dream and how you went about sort of filling out the dream part of these bullets?
Yeah. So it's kind of what you just said, like taking. That's why I started off with the feelings line there, trying to think of like what are the opposite feelings of the confusion and of the like, how do I choose and that kind of thing. How do I actually use this to solve my own problems? And so I figured that the feelings there are like, I feel proud of my code, like I feel confident that it's going to do what I want. I feel like I've totally mastered this tool. And so I just sort of like wrote out kind of yeah, I don't know, sentences around that, kind of headliney sounding things, like what would a person who understands this thing say, or like what would they sort of say to themselves maybe.
Cool. And without looking too closely at it, this looks like a lot of these were derived in that sort of, again, more of a brainstorm, brain dump kind of mode. Although some of these also look like they're pretty well tied to some of the specific things. Not everything down in the dream is tied directly back to the pain, and not every pain has a corollary dream. But when you are writing dreams, do you go back into the pain and say, well, if this specific pain here, what would the opposite be, sort of thing?
Yeah, so some of these bullets are definitely like, some of the dreams are trying to reverse specific pains, I think. So
What's an example of one of those, if you see
trying to
one?
think, like I know when to use layout effect, which is approximately never, which is sort of the answer to
That's
the
great.
answer to one of the pains of like, there's these two things that they're named basically the same, like which one should I use?
Got it.
Like the one above, I think it's up a few. Yeah, use effect and
I
use
see right
layout
here.
effect.
Yeah.
Like,
What's the
which
difference?
one should I use? What's the difference? Which is confusing. So I figured like that's a question I should answer, but it's also like sort of an opportunity to give them more of a, like this, the better, trying to paint a picture of the better world that where things aren't a problem.
Cool.
You would know which one to use.
That's great. Any other sort of notes on Dream before we move on to the fix?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of like where that quote came from. I think that might have been, I might have run these bullets by someone or something, and someone was like, "Hey, how about being able to level up your code by using this thing the way it was meant to be used?" So some of this is definitely like, I feel like sort of like mental scrapbooking or something.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Putting together pieces that people suggest, and I'm like, oh, that sounds good. That could be a line of copy maybe. And I think like the feelings under this dream headline, where they don't all directly map back to painful feelings, but I think it's sort of like I don't know, exploratory brain dumping or something. Like I don't know the word yet, but I'm like trying to get there by writing out similar feelings and work my way there.
That's a really, really good way to describe this part of the process where, again, I see this as sort of separating the writing from the editing, and maybe even the preparation for the writing. You're sometimes you have to write bad stuff in order to write good stuff, and you write down the first thing that comes to mind, and then you come back to it in another session or even later in the same session, and you see it. And sometimes it's like it's the thing where you suggest a bad restaurant that everybody doesn't want to go to, so they suggest a better one. You kind of do that for yourself.
Yeah, a little bit like that, yeah.
So that's cool. I do see we've got a growing group of folks in the chat, which is awesome. I would love folks to chime in and say hello. And also, as we're talking through Dave's writing process here, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I'll keep my eye out for those, and we'll do our best to get those answered. So we want to make this kind of interactive. Would love for you to be chatting amongst each other, but also asking us questions. Philly Newshound, that's Seth. What's up, man? Glad you're here. John has written a lot of bad stuff on the way to get better. We all have. That is part of the process. And Kev Griff, what's up? What's up?
Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Cool. Former recovering journalist. Yes, everybody writes bad copy. You cannot write good copy without first writing bad copy. I believe that is a universal truism. All right, so we've talked about the starting point of the pain. We've talked about the dream. For those of you who are just tuning in, sort of the narrative arc of a great sales pitch always starts with the reader's pain. What is the problem they're experiencing? And ultimately, while Dave's first version here is kind of a brain dump, the goal is to, from this brain dump, kind of excavate something that describes the problem as well or better than they do. And so we have to start with sort of the clay to sculpt, so to speak. Saber Dust, fellow 3500. Oh, what's up, Joe? Welcome. Glad you're here. Joe Augie, what up? All right, so we've got pain, we've got dream, and then we've got fix. And I saw you did some really interesting things here. So you're describing the formats. And this was before there was any product. You knew that you wanted to make something in 2 weeks, and you knew roughly what it was going to be. But there's no product. You're not writing a sales page for a product. You're scoping the product by writing all of this out, right?
Yeah. So that was sort of a critical part of this, I think, is like, and what 30500 teaches is to write the sales page first. And I found that super helpful for exactly that, like scoping the thing you're going to build, because otherwise it can just keep growing and growing. I mean, it's going to anyway. I feel like that's super hard.
That's just the entropy of reality.
Yeah, the scope creep was definitely a problem with this, but I think it would have been even worse if I just started building something and then tried to like figure out how to sell it, because I think there's also like all of this. There's, at least for me anyway, there's a lot of like self-doubt that creeps in at various stages of this. Like, is this actually a problem? Will anyone pay for this? Maybe this is too simple. Maybe it's too advanced, whatever. And I feel like a lot of that comes up when writing the copy. But if I don't already have like a product that I'm trying to like defend with the copy, that part of my brain stays a little quieter.
That's
Whereas,
a really good insight.
the opposite, I think, like if I've already built a thing and then you're going to like try to sell the thing you've built, it's like, oh geez, did I build the right thing? Like maybe I should have had this feature. And as you're writing out this list of bullets, you're like, oh, I should totally have this. Like this is crucial. Why didn't I build that in? So kind of this at least helps get that going and gets a lot of that out of your head first.
Nice. So did you start with the formats? Did you start with the fixes for individual panes? How did this piece come together?
I think I started with formats. I might have started with the fixes actually. So the individual panes fixes, like each of these bullets, I think each of these corresponds to a pane pretty directly, but like one of the ones in the list above. It's like, how do I kind of like, sort of like blog posts. I mean, each of these is like in 30 by 500 parlance and EBOM, like it's a little educational bit of content that'll help people fix this one thing, bundle them all together, and it's a product. So I think, I don't remember if I wrote down the formats first, but to me, the format was kind of, I was leaning towards video originally, because I thought that like, I have written a lot about this. Like I know this thing pretty well. I don't have to do a lot of research to like learn how to use it before I can teach it. I've already done that. So
Great.
I can like reasonably directly turn these into videos. Some of these I already had some videos that I could kind of fold in that I've made before. So I was kind of like leaning that way anyway, but I wrote down like, what would this look like as a book? I was thinking like maybe, other people in this little 2-week challenge were doing books. Most people did books. So I thought about like, I could do that too. I could roll up some blog posts. Just kind of keeping my options open at this point.
Cool. So this is a combination of making sure that the pains and the dream that you have outlined as priority have corresponding, we'll call them features, although I think the description of fixes is critical. If it doesn't provide a fix for a pain and it's a feature, it's a useless feature. So this is basically boiling your features down to what is essential, what is critical, what is going to be the buyer's priority, right? And what if they use it and it solves their problem, they're going to feel good about their $10 purchase. Really, really cool. And I also noticed that you have down here at the bottom some other stuff. It looks like it's maybe some scratch pad ideas, use effect recipes. Was that the original name of what this was going to be? Is that right?
Yeah, it was called Use Effect Recipes originally. Yep. And I don't know, I went through a bunch of different ideas for names. I don't know if they're in here, but those little scratch pad ideas, like all the double hash H2 things there, are all kind of like attempts at headlines. I think my process for headlines usually is like you just write out a bunch of them, and honestly, I probably should write out more, but at some point I'm like, I think I have enough ideas loaded into my head that I can start writing something. Yeah, so that was kind of like brainstorming headline ideas and then getting into like actually writing the copy.
Cool. So from outline, you're kind of mirroring what was bullet points and not necessarily complete sentences or even necessarily complete thoughts. Some were, but not all of them. And now you're coming back here and sort of recreating that pain, dream, fix arc with complete sentences, with more specific terms, and really working on what most people think of, I think, as a rough draft. But you're coming into this rough draft having already done quite a bit of work to scope it enough to have a kind of clear picture of where you're headed with the product. It's not like, HD high resolution, here's all the features, but you have a directional idea of what's going on. And more specifically, you have a clear and documented set of problems and who has those problems, right? That's kind of implied in all of this. So you can start doing your copywriting sort of following the same thing. And so if I, as an outsider, I'm looking at this kind of high level, this first section here is your pain in a couple of sentences. Hey, Mike Buckby, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. Glad you're here. Thank you for the follow. So,
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, so this is your pain, and then you've got a little bit of a transition into a dream. The use effect can be great. This sort of fleshes out those dream bullet points into complete sentences. And for folks that are looking at this, you can see like there is slight narrative to this, but it's really just kind of taking those bullet points as a skeleton and giving it a little more shape. And then this last piece, you learn use effect fast with use effect recipes. So that was, again, the first name of this product. And, oops, I do that all the time. And Nate Boscher, thank you for the follow. Appreciate you being here. Thank you and welcome to the stream. Sean Fiorito, what is up, stranger? Welcome.
Hey, Sean.
Saberdust, I see your question. I'm going to come back to it in just a moment. But again, so now we've got sort of the fix, and you're noticing that we haven't, in this first sales pitch, we haven't really talked about the product or any of the features until the very end. And for those of you who are new to this sort of copywriting approach, that is on purpose, by design. In the base of the first 2/3, we're talking all about the reader. The reader is the star. It's all about their problem. It's all about their goals. And only does the product get introduced when we're sort of creating a bridge from the challenges they're facing to those sort of more aspirational goals. And then you've got sort of a slightly more written out version of the fix, right? What this course covers. And again, these things are sort of tied back to the pain and the dream. So this is what turning brain dump bullet points into a very rough draft looks like. Any other sort of notes or things that you want to point out or things that stand out to you now that you're looking at this again with fresh eyes, Dave?
Um, I'm trying to think of. I think this. Not totally sure. I think this was the version that. So I did the live stream, like trying to write copy, um, trying to write some of this copy, and that was difficult. It's like
Yeah.
there's like multiple threads going in my brain, like one for the copy, one for the chat, one for the like just panic. Um, and I didn't get super far with it, but after that live stream, I took a couple hours away from it and then kind of came back and kind of loaded it back into my brain and got a little further with it. So some of this is probably from that, and some of it is probably from afterwards.
Cool. Saber Dust had a question about, and you talked about this a little bit, but I'm curious if you can maybe frame it out a little bit more. How much of the pain came from sort of active pain storming versus how much came from your own pain learning use effects? And I know when you described this before, it was definitely some of your own challenges from learning this a couple of years ago, once you kind of had to like get back to that. But you said that you had written e-bombs about this and had seen sort of the response and people actively seeking that out. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So some there is definitely like some of it from my own struggles with it, but I learned this a couple of years ago, so I think those are sort of uh, hard to recall at this point, at least super vividly anyway. So it's definitely more from the Safari side of things, but I don't think I'm trying to think of like the last time I've like did Safari and like wrote down notes on use effect. I don't remember the last time I've done that, but I have written e-bombs about it. I've gotten questions about it, and I've like read a lot of comments and complaints about it. So I think sort of even without writing notes, I've sort of internalized what some of the struggles are. So a lot of them come from that, and definitely some of them come from e-bombs. Like I have one that's called like how to use the use effect hook, and it's just got a ton of examples. Um, it's been getting like decent traffic, and so I know that at least some of those examples are kind of hitting. Otherwise, probably Google wouldn't be servicing it, and people wouldn't be clicking it, and so on. So, I definitely wanted to cover some of those things here too.
Cool. So definitely, I mean, your experience informs the answers for sure, and it sort of reinforces that, yeah, this is definitely hard when you're first learning it. But you had multiple inputs, and sort of, even if they weren't explicit from explicit Safari, you've got multiple sort of external data points that are clues, breadcrumb trail is kind of the way I think about it, that say like, all right, I've got articles that are performing well, I get questions about it, I get emails about things that I've written asking for further clarification. Like, that's not all explicit painstorming, and yet it is still painstorming even if you're not sitting down to write the notes. Depending on how much experience you have, sometimes it is valuable to apply painstorming note taking to your own inbox when people are writing in
Yeah,
questions and stuff. Like,
yeah,
so
I've
much good
done that.
stuff comes
That's
comes
super
directly
useful.
to you once you kind of get that flywheel of, I wrote stuff and now people want to know more, what they want to know more, how they frame the questions and stuff. I think the hard part is like getting into a habit where it's almost too easy and you get lazy and you forget to go out into the wild. So there's always a
Yeah,
balance to be had there.
yeah. I think it's easy to fall into that habit of like not actually writing notes, which is definitely the one that I've fallen into. Um, like every now and then I'm like, yeah, I got to go actually do some real Safari, like write some notes. Um, yeah, along those lines, I think it's tricky to I think in general with technical topics, but definitely with this one to separate the like specific problems people have from the like how do I solve this generally, and like what is the actual pain here, especially with a tool like this where it can do so many different things depending on how you want to use it, and like it works in a bunch of different situations. So naturally, people have a bunch of different situations where they're like, how do I do it in this specific case, and how do I do it in that specific, like um, so the temptation, or like, I don't know, maybe a balance there between do I make a bunch of lessons on specific situations, which is kind of where the use effect recipes idea was coming from. Is like, oh, if I just show people like 10 different situations and examples and solutions, then maybe they'll like kind of get a better idea for like how to do stuff with this. Versus the theory, where it's like, this is how it works and this is how to like use it generally.
Right. So it's sort of the difference between the sort of the textbook instruction and the triangulation of understanding. And you were sort of more
Yeah.
going for that triangulation of understanding. It's like, I understand this conceptually, but in terms of in application, in practice, if I have to go back to the textbook every time, I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I flipped us over to V1 of the pitch that you shared, and this obviously has a little bit more design applied to it. Tell me about the difference between where we just left off and where we pick up in V1 here.
Yeah, so that's I think like the bottom half of that text document kind of became this. I think this is actually when I said I took a few hours away from the live stream and came back and wrote the copy. I think this was like the first version there. And unfortunately, I only did like one commit at the end of it, so I didn't it's like with all the design and stuff. But there's sort of like there's like an e-bomb in the middle of it that I actually ended up taking out later. But this like quick primer section, and then that like wasn't in the original copy. I've got like pretty much some of the bullets that I came out with, like specific problems, along the recipes idea, and yeah, and then kind of like the opposite of those. Like here are roughly the lessons. And hey, sign up to hear more.
Cool. So what I'm seeing here is, I mean, the easiest way I can think about it is, again, it's sort of expansion and giving it more shape, and some experimentation. I think this experimentation of like writing an e-bomb in the sales page is a really interesting way to find instructive language, even if it feels like a lot to write to not be in the final thing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what did you learn from writing this e-bomb essentially in the middle of a sales pitch? What do you think that process gave you that was useful later?
I think it helped me boil down kind of this quick primer thing is kind of like the high level theory on how to use this thing. And when I finished writing it, I got to the next section and I was like, cool, well, I explained the theory, and then like, well, that's good, but it's not enough to actually go and do anything with this. Like, you need examples. And I think so, sort of that realization of like writing out the basics and then being like, well, I already gave them the basics. Like, do they even need this product now? And then when I got to this section, I was like, well, yeah, of course, like that's not enough. Like, even just knowing the rules, like knowing the rules of the road is different from knowing how to drive a car well. Or this analogy about owning a brush and some paint doesn't turn you into Bob Ross. So I think it was helpful for that. It's kind of like to lay out the basics of this thing, and also get me to realize like, well, the basics aren't enough, and like this product will actually be useful if I can kind of go above and beyond that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I also think it sort of reinforces a truism about the bridge, or maybe the shared part of the Venn diagram between good sales copy and good teaching, which is it's all about the reader, and B is you can deliver something useful, not just interesting or persuasive, but useful in sales copy. Like, I don't think this is necessarily, I don't think this is good or bad, but I think directionally it's right because you've got the reader's best interest in mind. And I think that's something that often gets missing when we're sitting down to write sales copy, is we're trying to convince them that this product is what they want, which is, not necessarily, I mean, it might have their best interest in mind, but it starts centering the product. And so I think having a little bit of an educational sort of side quest while you're writing does a really good job of putting you in a frame of mind of, I'm here to help the reader. And what you just described, I think, is really interesting, because and got you to the realization of like, oh, even once you know those basics, there's still problems, and like that's kind of the whole point of this product is like even when you know the basics, you still have problems, and that's really really cool to hear you talk through that.
Yeah, I ended up taking this out of the later. We'll see those ones, but um, I got some feedback that like for a small product, like you've already got the pain and the dream and the fix and stuff, and like this is making the page even longer, and you don't need a super long thing to sell a $10 product. Um, so it's like, yeah, maybe this is kind of I don't maybe this is my perspective as a person who's seen a bunch of digital products, but there's a correlation between like the size of that scroll bar and the price. you know, it's like I don't want people to see like, oh boy, this is a lot to read, and oh, it's $10. Like I feel like it has to match,
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
Like,
Well, and even then, it's like I think the what you're really talking about is there's a correlation. Like if people feel like they're being oversold, it doesn't matter how good of a job you're doing, right? So I think the key here is to really hit, like the main marks you always have to hit are connect with them by describing their pain as well or better than they did. Connect with them by showing them that you understand what they really want to be able to accomplish, and then make it crystal clear what they're going to get out of it. So, you're right. A higher price point or a bigger product that requires more persuasion. It's the analogy I often use is it's like a slingshot, right? And so if you put a tiny little pebble into a slingshot and you pull it back, but you don't pull it back enough to make the rubber taut, then you let go and it kind of falls out. If you pull it back far enough, the rubber gets taut, and then you let go and it launches in a trajectory. It creates momentum. That's the job of a sales page, is to persuade and create that momentum. But I think to your point about this sort of proportionality, if I put a much bigger rock in the slingshot, I need to pull it back a lot further, right? Or if it's a tiny little pebble, I can pull it back a tiny little bit. So I think all of that makes a lot of sense. That's really, really good sort of internal calibration. That if it's too long, it's not that people won't read it; it's that it psychologically changes the expectations of,
yeah,
wow, Dave's working really hard to sell me on this thing, it must be expensive. When they get to the end and it's a $10 product, that can work against you,
yeah,
because they're like, wait, why is this $10? Something's wrong here. And then they
right,
start then
right,
they've
right.
then you've lost all of that momentum, because they're just confused about that dissonance. Any other sort of notes on version one that you think are worth mentioning to folks that are tuning in or taking a look at?
So the headline here changed from this to the later ones. So the this this headline, I got some feedback on this. From you, Alex, in the 30 by 500 Slack, and kind of posting this first version. And I think you said something like it's not very painful, or it's not very crispy. Like it's not specific to this person. Like anything could come after that
Yeah.
headline.
Right. The feeling in the pit of your stomach because your wife
Like
sent
what?
you a text message. We need to talk.
That
like,
could be a lot of things. Um, yeah, and so my thought when I wrote this was like, oh, like uh, because it's kind of broad, and because it's sort of a visceral thing, that maybe it would make you read on. Like you'd read that sentence and you'd be like, oh, I should. What feeling? Like why? Like what's this page about? Uh, but I think that the thing you said to me was that like it needs to be clearer than that. Like they need to land on the page, and the first thing they read needs to be like, this is for me, not like what is this even? Because if they've got to ask questions, they'll hit the back button. So yeah, so this headline ended up changing. There was also some feedback I got about, this is sort of a technical thing, I guess, but I talk about life cycle methods here. And someone was like, well, all your focus on mentioning life cycles made me think that like this is for older React developers transitioning to the newer style. And I was like, yeah, it's not really for that. Sort of is. Like, there's these two sort of sub audiences here where it's like people, newer React developers, and like experienced ones who are trying to get up to speed.
Got
So
it.
I tweaked some stuff there too.
and I'm curious, and this is a little bit of a side quest as well. Design wise, were you using like templates from your existing site? I mean, I ask because this looks nice. You know, as a rough draft, you know, the topography looks good. The line width is easy to read. Nice big examples. Nice formatting. Is this pulling from old sales pages? Where did this design come from?
Yeah, thanks. So some of this is my blog styling. Uh, Even though this doesn't live on my blog, I ended up making a separate, sort of like a separate site for it using 11T. But I copied over some of the styling, and some of it, a lot of this is Tailwind CSS and Tailwind topography, which is sort of like a bunch of defaults for like writing long form text that I tweaked a bit to make it kind of match my style a bit more.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a spot where folks who don't have the design chops often get hung up. Is like, I put it on a page and it still looks pretty jank, and then I get self-conscious about it. So to have a kit, and I've heard from a lot of folks that Tailwind is just a really nice way to get started, and you can always mold it and shape it more going forward. But no, it looks really good.
Yeah, Saber Dust. This was the Tailwind Pros class, but it had some funny things that I wasn't a huge fan of, so I sort of swapped out some of the styles for stuff that looked more like my blog.
Sweet. Anything else before we move on to V2?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. So version 2, some things changed, Dave.
Some things changed.
What happened between version 1 and version 2?
Lots of things. So I wasn't super happy with this use effect recipes name in the first place. I kind of thought the name suggested. So at this point, I decided I was going to do videos, and recipes to me sounds like book or sounds like collection of examples or something like that. Doesn't sound like videos. So I thought like maybe there's a mismatch there originally. Oh, like right off the bat, like you'll see recipes and you'll be like, I don't want recipes. So I was throwing around, I wrote out a bunch of ideas for names, and then I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't like this use effect recipes thing. And she was like, what about like use effect over lunch? I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like it scopes it like lengthwise. It's like says it's going to be short. You can do it in under an hour. Says like roughly what it is. Like, I don't know, or it doesn't constrain it to be text or videos or whatever. So,
Oops.
yeah, I was a big fan of that name. And then I thought of the sandwich thing. I was like, oh, this would be perfect. I could use the cool like tablecloth icons and stuff.
Love it. Yeah, it's just sandwich emoji and a tablecloth repeating background. It's great. it's great, and I love this little touch when it lunches strike through. That's really good. Cool. Okay, so we've got a new name. With a new name comes a little bit of, it sounds like a little bit of confidence in the scale and the scope and the format as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and it just felt like it matched. Like I knew it was going to be small already, but this felt like the name matched to the product a lot better.
Yeah, I dig it.
Lunch and learn. Yeah, exactly. Like this. Yep.
I love that, the lunch and learn. So get so confident with use effect you could use it in your sleep. You're describing the format a little bit. This stuff that's up here at the top, where, you know, this seems a little bit like the dream, and then you've got your call to action. Where did this stuff come from, or what made you want to put this stuff up at the top?
Yeah, so I got some feedback from the first page that people didn't know what it was, or they thought it was, they said something that implied that it was a book. Like, this seems like something for a book. And I was like, oh, well, it's not a good sign that you think it's a book because it's videos.
Right.
I was like, okay, I think that's where the screencast and code thing came from. I was like, I should make it clear like what this is right up front, so that, and because it's a cheaper product, I felt like maybe I should try this like hero section idea. And then I kind of went back and forth on the leading with pain versus leading with dream, which would be interesting to chat about actually, because feel like that's like a super common thing to see in the wild anyway. Like a lot of people end up leading with Dream with like these big hero sections and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of where that came from. And then below that was leading into the pitch. And I thought that if you, I wanted to sort of have the sign up box right up top in case you landed on this thing and you thought like, oh, this is cool. This looks like solves use effect, and I have problems with use effect. I'll drop my email in the box. And for the people who would do that and wouldn't want to read through the whole thing, because
Right. So there's a couple of things in here. That last one I think is actually the big one, given that this is early adopter, right? So that person's got some more built-in motivation than the average person. This is still being worked on, obviously. And I'm presuming that, part of the build up to this 2-week product launch, I'm thinking back to when we launched Just Fucking Ship, and like part of the thing that launched Just Fucking Ship was the bit of building and revising things in public, and so
yeah,
you being able to share like new version live here and things like that. So it makes sense that folks who are already kind of tuned in for this race, so to speak, are going to be like, oh yeah, if there's a place to put my email address, I'm going to do it. So it makes sense to have that up front, even if it's just for while you're still in the momentum building area, just in case somebody, closes Twitter for the next 2 weeks. You don't want to lose them entirely.
yeah.
Cool. So that's sort of some design changes. This intro is also
changed a lot.
The copies changed a lot. So talk to me about the copy changes.
Yeah, so the headline did away with the that feeling in the pit of your stomach thing. This, you add one little use effect and suddenly ... came from John Hilton in the chat. Thanks, John. I was like, felt good to like have someone else who I feel like it's useful to get the outside perspective from someone who knows about this thing and has probably also struggled with this thing, and just it's easy to get stuck in your head about copy ideas. So that was super helpful. I was like, yeah, that sounds like it captures the problem, and then I can lead from that into like problems people might have, or commonly have, like infinite loops and stale data and weird bugs and stuff like that. And then from there, it sort of kept. Let's see. So, do you need to React, or you've been using it since classes? I think this is pretty similar. This is pretty similar. There's that warning thing still there. Don't know why it works. Warning in a way that I was trying to capture that feeling of like code that works, but you don't know why. Seems like a common problem, and this sort of has that problem.
This version still has the quick primer version in it.
Still has a quick primer. And this was still pre-launch. Cool. This version, I had the 2 videos. I think like the first version of this page said like 1 free screencast, because I had only recorded 1 free screencast, I think.
Nice. Cool. Any other notes on version 2 before we move on?
I don't think so. And this is a lot more Tailwindy stuff too. Like I did a lot of messing with the design to get the stupid sandwich to be in the right place.
I saw Sean Fioretto asked if you have a gluten-free option.
That's a good. I should like alternate between like a sandwich and an apple or something.
There you go. Or a little toggle. It's like a light mode, dark mode, but sandwich mode, apple mode, gluten-free mode.
Idea.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Nice little touch. That's funny. I love it. Okay, cool. So we've got an evolution. A lot of the evolution here was, on one hand, design. Lettuce wrap, James, very nice. Was design stuff. So really starting to really customize and tailor around sort of the theme and the story. The choice to open with Dream and having an opt-in early on was a strategic choice. You went back and forth on it, but trying to sort of capitalize on there's going to be the early adopter eyes on this before it launches. And I think that's an interesting decision, the difference between capturing attention before it launches and on the day of the sale. The difference between an email and $10 is not zero. And so given the two, I think this is a good spot to be experimenting with. I think it was a cool strategy. Cool to see that in use. And then most of the copy is the same, but some tuning. And really, I think this is a good example of not all rewrites are complete rewrites. You're sort of taking a section and giving that section a little more shape, or you're taking a section and giving it, the space that it needs, or rearranging it and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's move on to version 3. So this looks like what's live. Is that right?
This is what's live now. Yeah.
Cool.
Or maybe it's $19 now, but yeah, it's similar. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So got it.
I think that's the only change. Yeah.
Cool.
Since that one. But yeah, so similar design wise, I tweaked some font sizes and stuff. I changed the headline, so it's still dreamy, but the use it in your sleep thing kind of felt like hyperbole, and this is confident with use effects in under an hour. Felt like more down to earth, actually something you can do. It tells you like kind of how long the product is going to be, like what you can expect here. But still, I kind of went back and forth, and I was like, I don't know if I can get a pain sounding like a good short, painful headline. Super hard to come up with.
What's interesting, and again, I'm an admitted outsider to this, not being a React developer at all, but just from the chat, it seems like saying the word use effect is a pain. like the word use effect seems to invoke anxiety and stress among people. So like I feel like that's something we don't explicitly talk about a lot, is like sometimes you don't have to say a pain, you just have to say a thing that is known to be painful, and that does the job. And so this is a case where just saying use effect to the right audience, they go, oof, I get it. And that's kind of what I think that's why this works. That's my outsider analysis. And if we didn't have a live chat room, this was just you and I recording a podcast, I don't think I would have that. I wouldn't have that data. But I watched like 6 people in the chat just say, ugh, or I've like, what was it? I've written so many infinite loops with use effect. So yeah, like I think that's, it would be really cool to like be on the lookout for other examples of where you can just say a word and people like get a shiver. That's the vibe I'm getting from use effect.
I guess that is sort of the like, if you don't know what use effect is, like you will not keep reading this page. But if you do, like probably you would, because you know how painful it is. I feel like there's probably a lot of things in tech like that, like the front end world. Like you can say Webpack, and I think a lot of people will grimace, or like CSS, or just certain things that are just like pretty widespread pain.
Cool. All right, so I'm really into. I generally don't like a hero section. I think this is a really good example of a hero section in action, especially for a tiny product, because if we analyze this, use effect is the pain, as we just described. Get confident with use effect in under an hour is the dream, and here's your fix. You've got pain, dream, fix in like 3 lines, Dave. This is super efficient. And so like I'm not giving you a pass because I like you. I'm giving you a pass because you did a really good job. And obviously it worked because you made good money on this. But like this is a remarkably good use of a hero that we don't normally see. So well done.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way at all. I was thinking of it as like you learn use effect over lunch is the title, and then you've got dream, and you've got fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
That would be my analysis. So whether it was on purpose or not, or I think you've internalized some of this stuff. So sometimes what comes out fits the model, even though if you didn't intend it to.
Yeah.
So let's keep scrolling. So we've got a little more finesse and flourish, some new emojis. What else changed in the copy?
This section changed a bit. So this was previously the like whether you're new or old to React, use effect is a pain. And but I kind of tried to go more on the like you don't know what's going on. Like this is confusing. You couldn't explain why it broke, and you kind of just cross your fingers and do what the warnings say and hope it fixes itself. And then you kind of worry that it's going to break again because you don't really know what was wrong in the first place. Um, so kind of trying to evoke those feelings because I think really remind people of those feelings because I think those are probably pretty common.
Cool.
Um,
This headline is new, I believe.
yeah, I think the previous one was something about like infinite one little function, infinite uses or something. This is more like fixy, dreamy, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
and I cut out this doesn't have that section about the like the educational
Right.
here's how use effect works thing.
Right.
Um, I sort of go back and forth on that because I got a couple of nice comments about that. People being like, "Oh, cool that you included like a little bit about how it works." So it might be an interesting thing to test. Actually, just put that back in. Could kind of work.
I think it would be a cool thing to test. I also wonder about doing a thing where, like, because this is video, if you were to give that tutorial in a really, really short video and embed that, rather like
Interesting.
that takes up
Yeah.
less vertical space. It also informs the format, and I
Yeah.
think could kind of give you double the bang for your buck in that case.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Embedded preview.
Exactly. And it's
And
not,
then this
and
is
that
kind of
if
fixed
I'm
now.
understanding, like, those lessons that you covered in that sales page are not actually part of the the product itself. So it's not exactly a preview of what's in the course, but it's more of a preview of the style. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit of a. It would probably be a preview of the style. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not that lesson wouldn't be straight from the course,
Yeah.
but it would probably be a useful like, here's your 10-second overview kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's also, especially for something like this is something that I want to get better at with 30 by 500 is, we tease out videos to show people how we teach with video, because there are people who are like, I don't like learning from video. And I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, well, you haven't learned from my videos. But on the other hand, it's like most videos are not good. And that's
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
from, the audio video production to, all kinds of extra, like, they're not edited, they're not scripted, and all kinds of stuff. And I know that you put a lot of work into these being concise. Like, doing short videos is harder than doing long videos, I say on a live
Yeah.
stream that has now been live for an hour. Um,
Yeah, it's really hard. I like most of the uh so I sort of a side note, I guess. I recorded myself editing the videos for this course because in the like the first couple of days I was like, "Oh, I could do two products. I could make one that's on use effect and one that's on like how to, screencast and edit your videos." So it's like, "Okay, while I'm doing this, why don't I record myself doing the editing?" And I think it was probably, most of the videos were under 10 minutes. They're like 8, 5, 9, that kind of minutes. But they took, for like a 10-minute video, it'd be like 30 to 40 minutes of recorded stuff and then 30 to 40 minutes of editing. So it was like easily an hour for, 5 to 8 minutes of video times 8 or 10 or whatever it was.
yeah.
Yeah, it's time consuming. But I think I think there's two schools of thought on that. I think some people would rather have long content or like, pay for length sort of thing versus concise stuff that's to the point. And I think it depends on the learner style too. I think you sort of need to be like, if you're completely new to this, maybe the fast style is not going to be right for you. But
Yeah. I think I agree with everything you just said. I also think that just from, and I'm guilty of this too, is like sitting down without a plan. So Mets 2001 just said, so you're saying this isn't scripted? I'm pretty sure you were kidding. This wasn't scripted. However, I had an outline. The outline was roughly the different iteration drafts that Dave gave me, but I also had in my head like some things that I wanted to talk about. So, even within this, if we, there's a reason why most podcasts are unlistenable, and it's usually because it's two dudes talking to each other about absolutely absolutely nothing for an hour. And there's no plan. So even a little bit of a plan makes a big difference. And then you're on a spectrum from a little bit of a plan to a really intense, tightly edited experience. I think your point about like, the conciseness maybe not being ideal for a brand new learner. I think it depends. I think it's, there's definitely editing is on a spectrum. It's not a binary thing. So it's cool to hear your sort of reflection on that. And I love that you recorded it just to think about, ooh, maybe there's another layer to the process here. That's really, really smart. Cool. So we also got a couple of what people are saying. Not just a couple, like a few. And did you add these after sale or before sale? Where did these come from?
These were before sale. So because I had sent out the videos, a couple people replied. I got a couple. So like Peter replied that the videos were great. And it was like, cool, this is the free preview. So I was like, hey, can I use this on the sales page? Like, I'll be happy to link to your Twitter or whatever. Rosalind, same thing. I got reply to, like, the cheat sheet she refers to comes with this course, but it's also like a free e-bomb that I have as a lead magnet thing. So she'd signed up for like a free unrelated thing. It's like, oh yeah, I should include that in the course, and this would be a great testimonial. A couple people were in my little 2-week challenge cohort. And then the bottom two were other friends who both told me to charge more.
Yeah, charge more. Hey, include those. Those are great. That's awesome. I love it. Some funny stuff in the chat right now. Saber mentioning struggling the balance with video, so many explanations, rabbit holes you can go down. I think that I agree, and that's how, like, when I'm doing a podcast, I kind of let myself go down those rabbit holes, and then I remove those rabbit holes during editing, because sometimes those rabbit holes get me somewhere interesting, but the audience doesn't need to go on the entire ride. That's the job of good editing. If a rabbit hole takes you somewhere, you can keep the place you got in without all of the context. I think that's super important. Bruno, your point, micro learners require. Micro learning requires the learner to know all the prerequisites. It can, but I also think that's a design perspective. It's like you can design brief videos that say, here's what you need to know, and if you don't know them yet, here's the other brief videos that you need to know. So I think that's a learning design question, not so much a short videos require you to know all the prerequisites. So yeah, and then two dudes talking on nothing for an hour. Gonna work this time because I'm awesome. Have you tried it on weed? This is all great. You guys are hilarious. Hilarious. 30 to 40 minutes of raw footage, cutting down to 10 to 5 to 10 minutes. Totally common. Same experience here. I just what was I editing? I was editing a conference talk, and the only reason I got the first cut down to 22 minutes, it easily could have been 40, was because I scripted it more than I normally would. It was still an outline, but there were lines that I wrote down that I knew I wanted to say. But even that, I was able to edit down from 22 minutes to like 14, which is like, that's like 25%. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. And I think it gets easier with practice too. I know that, like, my first handful of videos, like at least 5 or 10 or so, were just like ludicrously long. Like it would take me like 5 hours, and I would cut it down to 2 minutes of video or something. It's just like so many bad takes, and just like getting stage fright, talking to myself in my room with nobody home, like just stuff that didn't make any sense at all.
Yep. Yeah.
But it, it's gotten faster, but it's still not that fast.
Totally. I will say that and this is a totally unpaid plug for Descript. Descript has sped up my editing of video. Like, Descript now is I would consider bordering on a full-fledged video editor at this point. I still have some things that I'm not as comfortable in it as I am in ScreenFlow, for instance, but I'm moving 3 to 4 times faster, and that's a lot in Descript awesome. Than I did before. And part of that is because it overlays a text transcript with the audio, and so I can kind of correlate. Like, instead of, there are certain words that I know what the waveform looks like, usually ums and uhs and things like that, but being able to see an entire phrase and either move it or edit it and stuff like that is an absolute game changer. And being able to do that in screencasts is, I think you'd find it a pretty amazing experience. And then bonus, you get a transcript, which makes it more accessible.
That's awesome.
And the
Yeah.
new version, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say this. I think they tweeted about it, that the new version of Descript is doing burnt-in transcript, burnt-in captions. So
Oh,
it
cool.
had built, like, basically in the export there is the captioning is actually embedded in there, so it doesn't matter where you upload it. It automatically shows really, really nice stuff.
That's awesome.
Highly recommend it. It's I don't rave about software very often. It is Descript, descript.com. Not an affiliate, just a fan. All right, Dave. Let's try and wrap up in just a couple more minutes here. So we're past your testimonials. What's included? I really like. I mean, this reminds me a little bit of what courseware does often.
Yeah.
Even
Inspired
though
by Podia, heavily inspired by Podia.
yeah. So, but this is just built into your HTML. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I went to Podia and like wrote some stuff in the console to like figure out the title names.
And it takes you straight to yeah. This is a really nice experience. Podia's courseware does frustrate me sometimes, but this is very nice, very elegant. Nice way to show previews.
One thing I probably should fix is that someone mentioned that the preview links don't open up in a new tab, and they expected them to open in a new tab. And that's,
Yeah, good call.
yeah.
And then your pricing page. This is great. So even though this was a 2-week product that was scoped to $15, then $19, discounted from $29, you have a bunch of other React stuff, and so you were able to bundle at launch.
Yeah. Yeah, this was cool. I'd been thinking about this from the beginning, that especially videos, I think people tend to value videos more than ebooks. And so sort of from pretty early on, I was like, I don't think I want to charge $10. Like $10 and $15 are pretty close. Like they're both impulse buy-ish if you like have this pain. They're both pretty accessible prices. Like it's not going to be a $50 video course, but I feel like it probably should be a little more. So I went with 15, and then bumped it up to 19. But I was thinking, like, how could I, like, if someone does want to, buy something more comprehensive or whatever, then I've got this React book that would pair very nicely with this. So, yeah.
That's cool. Is this pricing grid also part of Tailwind?
This is it's all Tailwind, but it's all like, I mean, Tailwind. It gives you a bunch of classes, but then it's up to you to
kind of on your own
together to do things.
This looks really nice. I mean, again, it's one of those things that I think people struggle, especially with something that is this simple, to come up with a clear way of showing like side-by-side comparisons. I might steal this, Dave, because this is very nice looking.
Go for it. I borrowed it from Mahmood, I think is, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he's one of the testimonials. Was in my 2-week product challenge cohort, and he had a video on like how to do landing pages, and had some design ideas. I was like,
awesome. I would like to buy that link. If you think to grab that and drop that in the chat, that would be awesome.
yeah, sure.
And then Dave, ending on your little bio. This is great. This is great, man. It was cool to sort of go on a little journey through all the way from bullet points to the final page, and you said sales. Like, what was sales in? Because it's been like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How long ago did this launch?
This was, let's see, September 18th. I think it was the 4th to the 18th.
Cool.
Was
So
the challenge, so it launched on the 18th.
and then you obviously had a window before the price went up. So like, what did sales look like in those? I'm presuming first week or two.
The first couple of weeks were, I think it made like 100 or so sales in the first couple days.
Nice, very nice.
And then kind of kept trickling in. Someone bought a team license, which was cool. Which isn't on the page, but like someone DM'd me and asked for a copy of 3. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I also had some people who bought my Pure React, the video workshop from last year, or any time really. But I sent a free copy to them, so they were like, 50 or so of those, and a couple of the purchases were like the emails didn't work, and I had to refund a couple of them because they were supposed to get it free. But
Got it.
but yeah,
So
yeah,
really,
pretty
really
much
solid out of the gate. Small product, a new product in your sort of constellation of products for this audience. Really, really smart use of sort of leveraging past assets and things like that. You have any sort of next steps or plans? Or, Sean asked in the chat about, how this feeds into the other stuff. How do you see this fitting into your existing email systems, sales systems? Like, where does this fit into the Dave Ceddia world?
that's a good question. So I've been thinking about. I did finally link it up from a few of the blog posts that talk about use effects. So like, there's a way that people can find this thing now. There's sort of like inline CTAs, and yeah, that's the video. That's it. It's got some good ideas on the design.
Cool. I'm gonna dig into that. Thank you.
And yeah, so aside from that, I think I could try some more bundling stuff. I could probably bundle it with the book, and mention that on the book sales page, which I don't right now. I think this over lunch idea is fun, and like, lots of people have told me they love the name, and they're like, "Oh, you could do a whole series." And I was like, "I should do a whole series. This is what I should do. I should just do like
the Dave Ceddia cinematic universe has been suggested in the chat.
I could do it.
The DCU.
There we go.
That's really funny.
Yeah, but I think I can kind of go. I think it'd be interesting to try doing more of these small products and bundling them together, whether they're on hooks, whether they're on like other technical topics. It just feels like a good, like, less than an hour, learn the basics of this thing.
And that also gives you the opportunity to then create bundles of those things.
Yeah, right.
I love
learn everything over lunch.
For anybody who is familiar with the publishing company, A Book Apart, the majority of their books are over lunch length reading. And what I really enjoy about the way they market stuff is their books by different authors clearly build on each other conceptually and make for really nice little clusters. Like, if you're going to buy this book, it almost ends up being like the Amazon, like, people who bought this also bought these two other things. Like, if you're going to buy them, I'm just looking at all of my AV gear. Like, you're going to buy this microphone, you got to buy the arm and the cable and all that. Like, you could do the same sort of thing where you're like, if you're going to buy this, it kind of makes sense to buy these other two things, and I'll even give you a discount if you do. And it's nice because you can, every time you launch a new product, you have the opportunity to either update or create a new bundle. So it's in the same way that you did with this one, but there's almost like a compounding effect, which I think is pretty neat. I dig it.
Yeah, almost like stacking the bricks.
Almost like stacking the bricks. Oh, you set up my closer, Dave. Well done. Cool. This was fun. I'm super, super appreciative that you took the time to share this.
Thanks,
it was really, really fun to have folks hanging out in the chat, both asking good questions and totally goofing on you and me. So big thank you to everybody for tuning into the Stacking the Bricks stream today. We're going to keep more of these streams coming. Last Friday, I did a live conversation with Nilofer Merchant, who wrote the foreword for the Tiny MBA. For those of you who don't have a copy, head to tiny.mba and grab a copy. For those of you who are React developers and don't have use effect over lunch, you know what to do. A couple of plugs. But that, for those of you who did not tune into that stream on Friday, that is going to be coming out on the Stacking the Bricks podcast this Thursday. Edited down, shortened up a little bit, tightened up a little bit, with a couple of other goodies in there. If you are a fan of the Stacking the Bricks podcast and did not know that it is back, we've been back with weekly episodes since August or so. So there's like 6 or 8 weeks now of episodes, and that has been me going on a little bit of a book tour, not just to promote the book, but to talk with people who you have things in common with if you are interested in a book like The Tiny MBA. So we're talking about folks who are doing creative work, freelancing work, business work, all those kinds of things. And it's been really fun. Every episode is different because each episode we kind of pick 2 or 3 of their favorite lessons from the book and go deeper into them. Talk a little bit about my own backstories, about why those lessons are in the book, how I came to learn those lessons, sometimes the hard way, and then also some of their version, like why that particular lesson or page resonated with them, how they learned that lesson. Those conversations have been a lot of fun. In a lot of cases, we're pulling a shorter excerpt from a longer episode, putting that on the Stacking the Bricks feed, and so you get sort of a teaser, and then if you like that person, you like their style, you want to go check out the rest of the episode, you can go do that on their podcast or their YouTube channel, whatever it is. Got a couple more fun ones of those coming up. I have the one with Nilla for this week, and then I have another one with sort of a deep dive into the lessons learned from putting the Tiny MBA on Amazon and then taking it off of Amazon. That was an interesting story. That'll be coming out in 2 weeks. And then I've got one coming up that is not explicitly about the Tiny MBA, but was a visit with Yaroslav, who runs Newsletter Crew, which is a membership for people who run newsletters. It's a pretty cool little crew over there, and they've got a podcast talking with folks who run newsletters as any part of their business. And we talked about a lot of really fun fundamentals about what people get wrong with newsletters, how they set themselves up for struggle from the start, a little bit about automation, a little bit about some interesting ways that we used email to launch the Tiny MBA without relying exclusively on our list. Another way of sort of like pulling back that slingshot we were talking about before. We did some new things there. So some really fun stuff on the horizon. If you're not already subscribed to the Stacking the Bricks podcast, go check that out. Yes, kind of a book club on the book. Folks are actually running book clubs on the book. We put together a deal. If you go to tiny.mba/book club, we are doing a deal where we'll give you a discount for you and your friends to buy copies of the book so you can all read it. And then there's a version where you can even sign up, and I will come and answer questions and do a little Q&A about your favorite lessons as well. So all of those. Hey, thanks for linking that, Dave. I know the majority of this stream has been promotion for your products, and so I'm sitting here plugging mine. Anything else you want to let folks know about what's going on for you, Dave, before we sign off for the day?
I don't think I've got nothing like big upcoming right now or anything in the works, but if you want to learn, I don't know, see what else I've been up to, daveceddia.com. I'll link it in the chat.
Sweet. And then, of course, this stream, like I said, where we're going to keep doing stuff. I have not figured out a consistent stream schedule, so don't ask. But as we do, like I said, we've got some fun stuff coming up. We're going to be doing a live group sales safari with Nick Pagari maybe later this week. I had to cancel on Nick. I had some personal stuff come up, but we're going to get a new date on the calendar for that. If you would like to try Sales Safari with me on stream, we can do that too. Hit me up. And for those of you who are new subscribers, new followers, new supporters of the stream, super appreciate it. We're going to keep this coming. This is sort of a fun new little adventure, way to be connected, stay connected, and hang out with friends in the chat and here on stream. So thanks for being a part of this today, Dave, and hanging out in the chat from time to time as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alex. This was fun.
Cool. All right, gang.
Thanks everyone for stopping by.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you later.
Bye.